This is the CreaseCast. Here's your host, Lach in the Crease.
Well, it was fun while it lasted, wasn't it? It was a great summer. It was a great summer. It's a great summer, and yet it is still boiling hot outside. We still got a couple more weeks until I think fall officially kicks in. But the Canucks playoff run is over. This is the final CreaseCast of the Canucks season officially. As you can see, playoff beard is gone. It was very sad. Canucks lose in Game 7. They lose 3-0. Although in reality, it's a 1-0 game. It's a 1-0 loss, more or less, because Shea Theodore doesn't get the winner until 6 minutes left in overtime. It's one of those games where you can you saw the writing on the wall, but at the same time, they were still in it. Like, they were still in that game for such a long period of time that you still felt like maybe a bounce goes this way, it's going to end up in the back of their net, and we'll be the ones going on to the conference finals. But it is Vegas in the end. It's the Golden Knights winning. And, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm like I said before Game 7, no one's going to be mad about this loss. There were some people who were like, oh, they're not trying hard enough. They look like they want to go home. And I don't think that's true in this case. This didn't look to me like a team that was dogging it or just giving it half the energy. It looked like a team that just didn't have any energy left. They exuded it all trying to get to that 7th game. And by the time they got to Game 7, which again, the next night after Game 6, because the NHL can't schedule games properly. I don't know why. They were tired. They were out of gas, and they had played 3 very physical series against teams that on paper, a lot of which were better than they were. Not Minnesota. Sorry, Minnesota. You're not better than the Canucks on paper. But the Blues and the Knights, at the very least, every team was more physical than the Canucks, and they played a very aggressive, high energy style of game that the Canucks, especially in their younger groups, just didn't have the legs to keep up with. And that happens from time to time. That's just, that's the way it goes. The Canucks have a team that are still on the rise. They're still getting better as they go. But right now, they're just not there. And that happens. And that's the way things are sometimes. They really put all their effort into that, they put every last bit of effort they had into winning Game 7. They just didn't have the energy left. And the Knights, while maybe exuded a similar amount of energy, just have more legs and more depth through the lineup of guys who can just keep up with that high tempo. And so it doesn't affect them as much. With the Canucks, they used what they had. They used everything they could to get it done, and it just wasn't enough. Thatcher Demko, hats off to him. That guy stopped almost 100 shots in 3 games. And holy shit, the one Canuck, thank God they had him in a way. Thank God they had him as sort of the one guy who hasn't been running crazy and wasn't tired. He played his 3 games and he was gassed by the end of that, but you wouldn't notice by the way he's playing on the ice because it was only his 3rd game. He played so well. He was so good. And it makes the Markstrom-Demko situation more interesting, although I think some people would disagree on that it's obvious that Demko is going to be the guy. I wouldn't say it's obvious but it's probably the right decision, but we'll get to that later. We're not there yet. Demko came in, he stepped into a situation that was not ideal, and he played his ass off. You can't deny that he played so much better than I think even his biggest supporters would have expected. And I would consider myself one of Demko's biggest supporters. I love the guy. I love my goalies. I didn't see that coming. I really didn't see that coming, where he was just going to be just as good as Jacob Markstrom was when he was coming in full energy and everything. I did not see that coming a mile away. That was crazy. And that was amazing to watch, including getting a shutout. 2 less shutouts than Robin Lehner, of course, but still amazing. He was fantastic in those 3 games. He is the sole reason they got to a Game 7. Without him, it's over in 5. Like, I mean, we all know that, but it's worth repeating because it just was fantastic to see. What else was there? Let's see. I mean, again, the Canucks, there wasn't anything special to talk about from the Canucks at that point. They were trying. They were giving every last body they had, but the Knights just pushed them back. They had so much more energy than they did. I mean, the Canucks only had 14 shots on net all game, which is just crazy. And it wasn't, but again, it's not like, again, it wasn't for a lack of try. It was just for a lack of energy, which is two very different things. But while they might, they might look the same on the ice, they're not. They're two very different sorts of situations. They exuded everything they could. Now, there is some criticism, I think, to be had specifically with the power play in that last game. I mean, it was 0 for 4. Specifically, when it came to that 5-minute major, that could have won the Canucks the game. They could have won the game on that 5-minute major alone. I mean, it's history repeating for Vegas, where, they're playing game 7 after blowing a 3-1 lead, and they give up a crucial 5-minute major in a game. This time being a much less controversial call, because Ryan Reeves decided this is the time to go and decapitate Tyler Mott for no good reason. It was a complete headshot, like not even close. Like it wasn't even close to being a clean hit. Like, get the hell out of here. What are you doing? And they gave him the 5-minute major in the game misconduct. He got suspended for it. Good, because that's a dangerous, reckless bullshit hit. And I will say, one of the good things out of that game, seeing Ryan Reeves come out of the game and just smash his stick and just snap his stick in half, that was beautiful. I love that. Nice guy off the ice. Horrible person on the ice. Just the worst. It was very nice to see him just come out of that game, just snap the stick. Snap his sticks and just throw a bit of a tantrum there. That was pretty fun. But Vancouver doesn't do anything on it. Like, it was split between 2 periods, which does sometimes make things more difficult. But at the same time, if anything, it meant the Canucks could keep their top power play out there longer, which is their only power play unit capable of scoring with regularity. And they just looked tired. They looked tired. They were not getting nearly enough shots through. They were overpassing. They were doing the things that the Canucks power plays, the bad habits the Canucks power play, that has gotten them into trouble during the season. And I've talked about this before, that when they settle into this bad habit of looking for the perfect shot, particularly in a game where it's like 1-0, where it's scoreless, you shouldn't just look for the perfect shot. Like, you need that urgency. You need to just get pucks through, get them in low, get a rebound sometimes. You're not going to get the perfect shot. This is NHL talent you're playing against, an NHL defense you're playing against. You're not going to get the perfect shot most of the time, more times than you are. And at that point, you need to start saying to your unit, as a unit, you guys need to figure out, okay, this lane's not coming. We only have so much time. We just got to get pucks through and try and jam for a rebound. And they weren't trying that. And that's something that I think comes down to the power play coaches. I think that comes down to Newell Brown as I believe the Canucks power play coach. It's that's not acceptable. You got to get them to you got to get that bad habit out, because it doesn't look like it's getting worked out, because they do it all the time. Sometimes, a lot of the time with the Canucks, when they're scoring on the power play with regularity, it is because they're getting those perfect shots. But once those lanes are gone, they can't seem to get the garbage goals that win you games. And that's something that power play unit, which can be so lethal sometimes, and could be even more lethal than they already are, if they found ways to get more garbage goals and get more rebounds and force more rebounds in front of the net and whack pucks home that way. They would make their power play accuracy stats like so much better. That's what you got to do. That's what they need. That's what that team needs to work. That's what that power play unit needs to work on when we come into next season, whenever that is. The one other, and then of course, when that didn't go in, you kind of felt like, okay, this game's not going the Canucks way tonight. This is not their night. And, There's the JT Miller penalty late in the game. You knew there were going to be some makeup calls, whatever that BS. And we're not going to get into that, but I mean, it was a penalty. A penalty is a penalty. You can't give them in this case, JT Miller took a penalty that you got to know, you got to know that's going to be called. And of course, the game-winning goal, Shea Theodore, the BC kid, the Langley kid, leading the series leading scorer out of all players in both teams with 9 points, scores that Game 7 winner. God, I wish the Canucks had a player like Shea Theodore. I really do. It'd be so nice. It would be so great if they had Shea Theodore on this team or a guy like him. That'd be so great. At that point, it felt like, I will say, when I watched that, I was a little bit relieved, just in the sense of I hated being in that limbo of like, oh, they could do that. They could still win this, but they look so tired. Oh, but the Knights are crushing them, but they could still win this. I was just hoping for a result sooner rather than later. And so when they scored just a little bit, was like, oh, okay, at least I can relax a little bit here. Like, just in the idea of, if the Canucks come back, it means they still have energy left in the tank to do this. But if they don't, at least it's not just dragging it out longer and longer, this painful game of watching the Canucks just get just dragged across the ice. It was a lot. It was too much to take in. And then, horn sounds. At the end of the day, it's that lack of it's that defense the Canucks just don't have yet. They did all right in these playoffs, surprisingly well, but they played above their heads in terms of that defensive group. The Knights just have a way more depth and talented defense in front of their goaltenders that the Canucks don't. Like, the Canucks can't be giving up. Like, it's awesome seeing Thatcher Demko put up 40 saves, 30 saves a night, but you can't do that during the regular season. You will die. Your team will die if you do that. You can't expect your goaltenders to be stopping that many pucks every single night. You're going to burn them out very, very quickly. So that's the sort of thing that cost them in this series and cost them in that last game. It caught up to them. They got a little lucky. They got lucky that they had such great goaltending in games 5 and 6 that it didn't break them. And then in game 7, the dam finally broke. And even if it was one goal, that's the thing. It's you can't be giving up that many shots with so much regularity and expecting to win. It's too many. And then finally, like, that lack of depth, speed, and that ability to push through a 7-game series, having guys who can keep up with the pace of play that the Knights were trying to dish out, which the Canucks, for the record, will be very good at if they surround their young core with the right pieces. They could be so good at that end-to-end speed and quick machine-like hockey that the Knights play. Maybe I don't want them to there are some certain parts of the Knights game that I don't think the Canucks would be very good at, but one thing they would be is that transition game that's so quick and so, like, that fast pace of just being able to, like, wall off that entrance from the neutral zone into your own attacking area, take the puck back and just storm it right back into their own end. That's what the Canucks need. They're not a dump and chase team. They're not quick enough, especially in those bottom 6. They're not quick. They don't have the feet for it, but they could if Canucks management takes the right lessons out of this series. And I'm not going to, again, I have an article coming out on this tomorrow, so I'm not going to do too much of a deep dive into that right now. But that speed that quick speedy hockey is something the Vancouver Canucks as a future group could be so good at. It's just a matter of finding the right cast of players that can play, that can keep up with Elias Pettersson and Brock Besser and JT Miller and Bo Horvat, etc. Those are and Quinn Hughes. And Quinn Hughes, let's not forget about Quinn Hughes. That's the type of hockey that the Canucks can be so very good at. It's just they have to find the right people for it. They didn't have it now. They don't have it now, and that's okay. But because they're still building, they're still growing. But you got to get it soon. If the Canucks want to take the next step next season, they need more speed. They're going to need a speedier group to surround that great Canucks core. So now we entered the official off season for the Canucks, and and of course the questions come up of where do we go from here? Where does this team go after already, defying expectations, going so much farther than I think anyone anticipated. Um, you know, it sucks that that the Canucks are out of the playoffs, but I'm so proud of that group. They did so well. They really defied the odds. They had no business, getting this far as I think a lot of people are concerned. And they did a hell of a job. They entertained us for a full extra month in this horrible, horrible year 2020 that we wouldn't have gotten with that we didn't think there was a while ago where we thought we weren't even going to get any sort of return. And I can only imagine what would have happened if, say, they had come back and they had lost to Minnesota in that first round the first week and just done right there. Like, imagine that. Like, the Canucks made it all the way into September, and they made it farther than the President's Trophy winning Bruins. They made it farther than a lot of teams that were expected to go farther than them. And, like, how can you not love this group? Like, they were so fun. They're such a fun group. They paused their own games as they were part of a group that helped spearhead the idea of pausing games for social justice, and that's great. They posted so many cool videos during the season, during the playoffs, of them we saw so many inside looks at just what a fun group they are and how much they have fun, like Louis Domingue baking, JT Miller reading out lineups, them all crowding on Chris Tanev after that OT goal, which feels like a century ago. But it was only a month. It's only been a little bit over a month. And they did so well. It was such a fun season. And obviously it's not the ending we all want, but it's still a hell of a year. Like, I have nothing but great things to say about how this season went. And Travis Green, for that matter, as we do talk about the fact that he has got one more year left on his contract and extension's got to be a discussion coming up this off season, Travis Green showed during these playoffs that he can really coach, that that was good coaching. There was not one point in these playoffs where Travis Green got out coached, and that's not nothing. It's not a big thing, but it's not nothing either, because it means because you know how coaches are. There is sort of this idea, with the way coaching is, they're kind of every coach kind of has to come with that little level of, for lack of a better word, like cockiness, where because they have to be the person that says, I have the one key to winning the Stanley Cup, and then convincing 22 people and management, that management and players and everybody, that they have the one path to the Stanley Cup, and that they know the one path to a Stanley Cup. And, that means you gotta have a little arrogance. You gotta have a little bit of that belief in yourself and that best, right? That's just how it is. You can't be a good coach if you're super if you don't have that kind of confidence, right? You need confidence to do it. But at the same time, you need to be comfortable with adapting to change and changing your plans over time, because in reality, there is no one true way to win. It's who can adapt their group in the best way possible. We're going to help their players adapt in different situations to different teams in the best way possible. That's how you win. And Travis Green did a hell of a job with that. There were points, during the season, I think there were a lot of criticisms that he sometimes gets very hell-bent on the matchups they play on his team, on line matchups, and keeping very certain groups together and not changing things up and not really trying new things a lot. He very much sticks to the lineup that he knows and trusts most of the year. In the playoffs, he didn't. He did a really good job at adapting to the situation and learning from the teams they're playing and saying, okay, well, this might work and this might work and this sort of things. And apparently he did a lot of analytic stuff during the break, where he develop different ways to get better results out of his defense and out of his forwards. And for the defense's case, well, I said defense is an issue for the Canucks going forward that they need to fix, and we'll talk about that in a second, is they did way better. They played way better in the playoffs than they did all of the regular season. Like they were they were not nearly as much of a tire fire in their own end that I was concerned about. Like there's still, lots of holes and flaws and probably a big part of why they're not still going, but they played above their weight by a hell of a lot that compared to what we usually see from them in the regular season. So I'm really impressed with the way Travis Green can coach, and he's a good playoff coach, clearly. And if this is the kind of situation we're setting up for, it means that the Canucks, if they can find the right people to play alongside their stars, they could get this far again next season. But this is where the hard part comes in, which is that general manager Jim Benning doesn't have a lot of cap space to work with. He has to sign a lot of players again. He has a lot of big UFAs coming up. The big one being, of course, Jacob Markstrom and Tyler Toffoli. And then and RFAs to sign, and then after that, you have to find replacements and new players, and make fixes to the problems that are already in your system. Just looking at the Canucks cap friendly page right now, I mean, the Canucks right now, they finished the season with $30,000 in cap space, so zero essentially, zero cap space, and it's going to stay flat next season because of the pandemic wiped out any sort of extra revenue the NHL was gonna get. So you have to figure out what you're gonna do with it, like how you're gonna handle this specifically on defense. I would say, because that defense, I would say I could see a lot of that. I would feel like they need to look at seriously turning over a lot of that group. Like a lot of that group is probably out the door next season. And for good reason. Like they're just not the level they need to be. The Canucks need, like, it really was a lot of points during that playoffs. Quinn Hughes was just carrying that blue line when it came to offense. Specifically with offense, he was carrying that group. And you got good contributions from Edler and Tanev, but outside of that, and Stetcher had a few points in there as well, but outside of that, nothing. And yes, not every defenseman is going to score. That's not always their thing. But you want to see more contribution from throughout the lineup instead of just your top guys. And because you can't win on a couple players can't win you a season, can't win you a Stanley Cup. Just ask Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, just carrying that Oilers team as far as they can go, but they can't go far enough because they don't have the right people around them. With Hughes needs better defensive teammates to play with because he can't be carrying the offense every single night like that. I think the Knights really proved that, in the sense of if they could just shut down Quinn Hughes for a night, it just seemed to stymie the rest of the defense and from getting any points on the board too. So you need to open it up so that there are more scoring threats on that blue line, so they can't just focus all their efforts on like sending 2 or 3 guys at Quinn Hughes, because he's not going to be able to play. He's not going to be able to play that way either. Like if you give him an equally, or maybe not equally, that's asking a lot, a semi-good offensive talent to play alongside him. Now again, you go back to the thing that really worked for the Canucks during these playoffs, is where Travis Green would make the opponents choose the matchups that they wanted to fight against, and the players made them force them into difficult decisions on what you do, because if you say go after one player too much, you expose player B. If you go to Elias Pettersson and double team Elias Pettersson, there's Brock Besser wide open on the other side for a goal. That's the sort of thing. You need to make sure that the threats are spread out enough on the scoring threats are spread out enough that you force the opponent to make tough decisions. Right now, there isn't a lot of tough decisions. It's just keep Quinn Hughes contain Quinn Hughes as long as possible, and we'll be fine, sort of thing. So if the Canucks can find him an equally good scoring threat to play alongside him, that instantly makes Quinn Hughes' ability to score, to keep on scoring, that much better. And he was doing already pretty damn good without being contained, but being given special attention by Vegas. He still did a pretty damn good job. But that's the whole point. You can't have one defenseman carrying the scoring on your defense. You can't. So if I'm the Canucks, I mean, you have Jack Rathbone coming in from Harvard, which he's a young kid. I would not expect him to have a similar season to Quinn Hughes in any way, shape, or form. But I think he's going to be at least an upgrade because he's younger and faster, and he's going to have the pieces to be a pretty good offensive defenseman in this league. Expecting him to come in and do that right away is asking a lot, but at least he's an upgrade. He is an upgrade, and this is the kind of players that you want to keep looking for. If I'm Vancouver, you really need to start considering letting go of some of the older guys, and that's just the way it is. Like Chris Tanev is 30, which isn't that old, but it's, he's going to be getting another big, probably a hefty contract extension that I don't think it's in the Canucks' best interest to sign. I think if they want to sign free agent defensemen, they need to be looking on the younger side of things, that they can find for another kind of JT Miller-esque trade. Maybe not for that hefty a price tag again, but but finding, like, spending a little bit extra to bring in a young skilled defenseman who's good in his own end to play with Quinn Hughes, or to anchor a second pairing. That's the sort of thing the Canucks need to be doing, and they need to be looking for, which is why I also think they should not trade Troy Stecher. I think Troy Stecher is pretty good in his own end, is pretty good in his own end. He does get points. He doesn't get a lot of points, but he contributes a fair amount, and he's not like a huge liability in his own end, and I think that does matter. I think they would be silly to get rid of Troy Stecher versus one of the other guys, or keeping him in favor of, say, like a Tyler Myers or something, who, oh my God, I mean, they're not going to be able to get rid of that contract anyway, so who cares? $6 million. Oh my God, you will never get rid of that. Okay, but I could see a lot of this blue line turning over next year. You still have to find replacements for all of them, but I would not be against the idea of, say, if they went and were like, okay, we're going to get rid of like 4 of our defensemen and replace them with new guys. Like, I look at that list and I'm like, yeah, if you can find younger, more offensively minded defensemen who still are good in their own end, because that still matters, and that's still a huge issue for them. If you can find guys responsible in their own end, younger, at the very least, are a little bit faster and can keep up with the play better, that's what you need. That's what they need. And that's why, if you can swap some of these older guys out for that, it can improve this team, like, immensely. It can be such a huge improvement for that group, like, without a doubt. Goaltending. This is where it gets interesting, right? Like, Markstrom had a little bit of a groin issue, which kept him out of those last few games. And Thatcher Demko came in and was fantastic. It does beg the question, what do you do now? Because there was a point during these playoffs where it was like, okay, you just backed up the dump truck of money to Jacob Markstrom's house. Who cares what he wants? Just give it to him, right? Now, like, even with Demko, like, at the end of the regular season, I should say, he was turning a corner. It looked like he was getting better, but there was still a little bit of concern if he was ready for the full-time gig or not. I think he proved it. I think he more than proved it in the playoffs, that he is ready for a full-time job. So the way it goes here for me, and this is my take on it, is if you can get Markstrom for short-term money for like 2 years at most, if you can get him for 2 years, sure, keep him. If you can't, if that's not a non-starter, I think you got to let him walk. I think Demko's ready. And that's fine. Now, that would mean, I think, personally, that you would have to go and get a new backup goaltender. You would have to get a more than capable 1B to back up Demko, because you can't expect him to play 60 games a season. And also, I don't know if Mike DiPietro is fully ready for NHL backup duty yet. I will ask some people on that, but I believe he still needs like a little bit of time, maybe like half a year. So if you can get somebody for one season to come in and just fill the gap for them, that would be great. Like, that's going to be a key necessity. That's going to be a big necessity for them. they can find a guy to sign on that 1-year deal or even a 2-year deal for cheap, who is still a stable 1B goaltender, that will go a long way. That'll go a long way to making Demko better. It'll make your team better. It'll make your results better. That's what they're going to need if they're going to move on from Markstrom here, which I think it's in their best interest to do. As much as I love Jacob Markstrom, and he is such a fun guy, he's such a great goaltender. He's the MVP of the team this year. I just don't see a situation right now with Pettersson and Hughes coming up next season for new deals where you can sign him long-term. It's just not there, and it's not in your best interest. Demko is cheaper and a better option. It's far better for the Canucks to go in this direction and go with the younger 24-year-old goaltender instead of signing an extension for the 30-year-old guy. As much as I love Demko or Markstrom, and I would be really sad to see him go, it's the right thing to do. It's the best asset management and cap management decision you can make. I think Demko is ready. And I think Demko is ready. It's just a matter of, again, once you decide we're not signing Markstrom, the clock is now ticking for you to find a good backup, to find a good 1B backup, because that's what every team needs now. You can't go into a season with a mediocre backup goaltender who's just going in to fill a back-to-back every now and then. You need a guy who can come in and win games, because otherwise that can be the difference between you making the playoffs and missing the playoffs, or even between you getting home ice advantage in the playoffs and not. Find a good capable backup goaltender and keep Demko. Let Markstrom go find a new contract somewhere else, because I think he's going to command some hefty money that the Canucks, it's not in their best interest to be signing. So I would give up on that one, unfortunately. In terms of the RFAs, I think a lot of these guys are going to stay. Jake Virtanen is an interesting decision. I would not be surprised. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they kept him, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they let him go or traded him. And I think personally it's in their best interest to move on from Jake Virtanen. I don't think he's going to ever really fit the mold that the Canucks need from him here. I think he could find that somewhere else. And I don't think and I know people are going to say, well, if he finds the mold somewhere else, isn't that a failure on the Canucks' part? Not necessarily if, say, they trade him for somebody else that they do need. Some players just don't fit within your system very well and don't fit the needs don't fit your needs the way you thought that they would. And maybe they'll find that success in another team. That's fine. For all you know, even if you let them go, for all you know, if you keep them, nothing's going to change, right? It doesn't change. Yes, he got to 20 goals finally. Shotgun Jake. He got his 20 goal season with an asterisk because playoffs. But I don't think he's ever going to be the player that the Canucks need. I don't think he's a player the Canucks need anymore. I think he is far better suited going to a new market and a new team where he might get a little bit less, I don't want to say notoriety, but maybe a little less attention from local people. I think it might be good for him specifically. I think it'd be very good if he moved on to a much quieter, less crazy market where he's not the hometown kid anymore. I think it could be better for his career, and I think it could be better for his development, frankly. It would be in the Canucks' best interest, I think, to move on from him and free up that space for one of their for a guy in Utica, for some new younger players. Tyler Mott, I think you keep Tyler Mott. I think he worked wonders. He's he's a very specific player. He works in very specific situations. So maybe don't bring him back for too much money. But I mean, he was making less than $1 million last year. I highly doubt he'll make much more than $1 million. I don't think he'll make more than $2 million next year, if even close to that. I would say close to 1.5 million or something at most. I think with Tyler Mott, he works in very specific situations like penalty kill. We saw a lot of great rushes from him, but he's quick. That's the thing that I do like about him, is that at the very least he's quick and he puts that speed matters more. I don't want to see a lot of players with Tyler Mott's. There are other players out there who you can find from Tyler Mott who are more talented and that fast, which should be in the Canucks' best interest to go out and look for. But at least for a short-term bridge, like I think Mott works. I think he works as a gap piece. I don't think he's part of your long-term core, like or your long-term depth group, I should say. He's very much a fill-in group, but I've said before that fill-in groups are those fill-in guys who you get rid of once they become too expensive. That's how a lot of cup teams win, is they just fill that depth group with cheap contracts who can keep up with their stars. Mod can keep up. He can keep up with the pace, and he can keep up with the play, and he's aggressive, and he plays the kind of style that the Canucks need in that bottom pairing. If they can find someone a little more talented than him and a little better of a scorer, that'd be great. But that's not always easy to find. So with Tyler Mott, I think they have a good bridge gap there. I think they have a good bridge in there. And we've already talked, and, above all, this is going to be the biggest, hardest part to deal with, is the fact that they have a lot of bad contracts. And if you want to bring back, and if you're going to go into next year when you're probably going to give Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson like crazy NHL money, like, I would not be shocked if both of them walked out with contracts like top 10 in the NHL, and they'd be deserving of it because they're that good and they carry this team that much. I don't see you have to clear out a lot of space. And a lot of this is from players who cost you a lot of money. I mean, you even looking into I look at next year, there are the only two guys who are UFAs on forward next season are Tanner Pearson, who's good and on a cheap deal, might I say. $3 million for what he brings to the table is pretty good. And Brandon Sutter. I mean, you let walk at that point. I mean, he's going to be 30, 32, 33 by that point. Like 32. He'll be 32. You can't re-sign him, and you should not re-sign him. That's a bad idea. But that's still only $4 million coming. Like, if you got rid of both of those players, that's only about $8 million. That's not enough. That's not nearly enough. You are just scratching. That cuts out maybe like half. Maybe that will cut like free up half your cap space, but you've got a ways to go after that. There are just so many tough contracts, like Jay Beagle's contract you got to get rid of. I mean, Michael Furlan's is a bit of an iffy one because I think he will probably end up retiring, unfortunately. But even then, his injuries, it's wouldn't be surprising if he goes on LTIR for a long time. So that kind of factors in, but still not a lot. But I look at stuff like Jay Beagle's contract and Louis Eriksson's contract, obviously, and Tyler Myers' contract. You do have Edler coming up, and that's $6 million off your books at that point. But those are the bad anchor contracts that are gonna make this so much more difficult and are gonna make this so much tougher for the Canucks to get done. And they could be such a much more competitive team if they just got rid of those. And it's hard to get rid of them because they're bad contracts. Nobody wants them. But it's getting to the point now where if you're the Canucks, you need to maybe take a lot. You need to take the L here a little bit. You're going to need to admit that these contracts are trash, and maybe take a loss on a bad trade. You really might have to. With the Louis Eriksson one is a big one. He barely plays. He's a healthy scratch. You just got to get that off your books. You just got to get that. You got to get that to go. That's unfortunately where it might be like, okay, look, we'll give you a first round pick. Just please take this man off our hands, right? To some other team. But I mean, it makes you better because that's $6 million, a lot of money off your books now that you free up to sign. Again, think about it this way. Yes, maybe you lose Louis Eriksson and a high draft pick, either second round pick, first. We'll say second because those are still pretty hefty. Those still cost you a lot. Yes, you lose a second round pick. Yes, but you are gaining Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson because you can now have the space to sign them both long term. You do not want to give them a bridge deal. That is the wrong thing to do. You have to sign them up, give them the full max contract. Well, close to a max contract. Now, you do not want to go into this and be like, we'll deal with this again in 5 years. No. Sign them both now, long term, next season. You have to. You absolutely have to. And that means you need to make some you might need to make some bad deals to get rid of the bad deals already on your team. And that sucks. It's not the best way to do things, but what are you going to do? I would rather lose a second round pick than say lose Quinn Hughes in 5 years, or like lose Quinn Hughes in 5 or 6 years. Like, that's just the way it is. You have to kind of take the L here, because in the long run, you're going to get many more W's just by having Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes locked into this group for the next 8 years after this. It's the right way to go about this if you're Vancouver. Let's see. Before we end up here, let's talk about a little bit about the rest of the playoffs, because everything else happened. I mean, the Islanders make it through to the conference finals. The Stars make it through to the conference finals. The two most boring teams. Oh my God. Game 1 between the Islanders and the Lightning will be done by the time you listen to this. It hasn't started yet, but I'm sure it'll be done by the time this episode actually gets to you. Tampa is going to be without Steven Stamkos for the entire Eastern Final. But I think they're still. I think they are one of those few teams that can handle the way the Islanders play, like that absolutely slow, boring defensive game. I think the Lightning have that group that can really break through that and kind of force them to get a little bit more chaotic about it. I refuse to pick the Islanders, just on principle. I refuse to pick them. Yes, I know that's probably going to guarantee they win, because I'm not picking them to win, but I mean, the Islanders did put away the Flyers, who are a really talented team, in 7 games. It took them a little extra time, and the goaltending is a bit of a cheat code, because Varlamov and Greiss somehow have like one of the best goaltending. Like, their goaltending coach, I think, is Mitch Korn, I think is his name. He's done wonders with that group. Good Lord. And that it makes up for all the years where the Islanders just couldn't get a save for their life, It's the Islanders are in a good position where I think they could, again, still shock some people because they're boring and uninteresting. But I think the Lightning have an offensive group that will not only take over the defensive side of, not only overpower the Islanders defense, they also have their own very good shutdown defense to match. And I don't think the Islanders have the firepower to respond the way the Lightning can. I think it's going to be a long series. I think it's probably going to be like, I think I said on Twitter Lightning in 6. I might be wrong on that. But I think it probably is going to drag out. It's probably going to drag it out a little bit, unless the Lightning get through to them very quickly. Unless the Lightning break through very quickly, then it could maybe be like a 5-game finish. But I'm going to say most likely 6 games. I'm going to say Lightning in 6. Stars and the Knights. Stars already won the first game 1-0, and it was so. Oh my God! If I swear to God, if we get a Stars Islanders final, it's gonna. Oh my God! No one's gonna watch. It's gonna be so bad. Good Lord. God, Tampa, please win that series, okay? Because I need to cheer for the Stars, because ew, Vegas, gross. The Stars did a really good job at not letting the Knights get under their skin in that first game. Lord knows the Knights are annoying as all hell when it comes to just working the refs and trying to get calls to go their way, because they just yell at the refs and complain and whine all game. The Stars the Stars are the most penalized team in this playoffs left in these playoffs. And they did a really good job at not letting Vegas get to them. They just walked away when there was a hard hit or something, or some sort of play. Instead of engaging and letting them know they got under their skin, they skated away and let it go, because they're like, we're winning. I'm not going to give them anything. And they did a hell of a job of that, and they won. And the reason they're here also is because of a young rookie named Joel Kiviranta, who I had never heard of in my entire life. And then, he got a hat trick in Game 7, including the overtime winner. No big deal, right? Good Lord. Dallas is just coming alive at the right time. Anton Goudobin is playing some fantastic hockey. Marc-Andre Fleury started game one, which was interesting to say the least, but I think that's maybe just so they could give Leonard a rest. And he wasn't bad either. I mean, he only let in one goal. He was fine. He did a great job. Although he, there was points in the beginning where he looked a little shaky, but overall, hey, he's still here. He's still here and playing, which is just fascinating. Fascinating coaching choices by Pete DeBoer. With the Stars and Knights, this is the hot take I have here, is that I think the Canucks really did some damage with Vegas. I mean, Kevin Bieksa, who has been fantastic on Hockey Night in Canada, made the point of saying, I think Thatcher Demko got in the Knights' heads because they weren't taking nearly as many straight on shots as they normally do, or they were kind of just waffling them in and hoping for a bounce or something, right? They didn't. And he might be right on that, and I think he's right on that. But I think also at the same time, I think the Canucks just took a lot out of the Knights, and I think it took a lot of their confidence out. I think they took a lot of their confidence out with them, especially because even in Game 7, they didn't score a goal until the third period with 6 minutes to go. The Canucks, I think, really did some damage. I think there was a point where people were like, whoever wins the Canucks and the Knights is going to the conference finals, no question, or the cup final, no question. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think Dallas has the upper hand, and I would have said that to you before Game 1, even still. Because I think the Canucks played spoiler in their own way, where they just took so much out of Vegas for Vegas to just finally finish them off, that I think they're approaching the same thing the Canucks had in Game 7 of that series, where the Knights are kind of running a little bit out of gas and they're kind of just running on fumes and hoping they can get through it. But I don't think with Dallas they're going to be able to, because Dallas outclassed them in the first game. Even though they didn't score and it was super duper boring again, Dallas put on a clinic. They were so much better than Vegas from beginning to end, and it didn't matter. And Anton Goudobin, who whenever the Knights did get shots through, Anton Goudobin was there to shut them down. Knights have only scored one goal on a goaltender in the last 3 games they've played, because remember, the other 2 were empty netters in Game 7 against the Canucks. So they only scored 1 goal on a goalie in the last 3 games. And only 2 only 2 in their last 4. So the Canucks might have broken Vegas. We might have broke them. You're welcome, Dallas. Finish them off, please. I think Dallas is going to win that series. I think that's going to be Dallas in 6. And with that, I think we're going to call this an episode for today. Now, here's the thing. Canucks season's over, but hockey's not over. So as for this show, first of all, thank you so much for everyone who's been listening this season. It's been so fun. And during these playoffs, seen a really good, extra boost in people listening and enjoying the show on YouTube and everything. And it really means a lot to me. And it's why I get out of bed every morning to do this show, because it's so fun. And I love that I get to do it for you guys. So thank you so much for listening. The show is not over. Even though the Canucks are done, the show's not over. We're still going to talk a lot about Canucks, especially their off-season plans as we go forward. Probably going to get back into the swing of having guests on again. But here's basically the Canucks off-season plans for the CreaseCast. Essentially, starting this week, I'm going to a set schedule. So we're going to still do 2 episodes a week, every week until free agency, NHL free agency, which I think is in about 5 weeks. Still 2 episodes a week I believe it's going to be Wednesdays and Saturdays. I haven't figured out the first day. I know Saturday for sure there's going to be new episodes on Saturday. There's going to be 2 episodes a week for sure, a set schedule on that. After that, I'm going to take a few weeks off. I think they're going to still be the bonus episodes, but I haven't figured that out yet. But at the very least, 2 or 3 weeks where I'm going to go on vacation because I need a break. After the season after the cup's been handed out, after most of the NHL contracts have been handed out, I'm going to take 3 weeks off from the show to just relax and get some time away. Because I didn't stop. I only stopped a little bit during June, just back when there was no hockey on. Now I need to recharge. And then once I come back from that, we'll be doing 1 episode a week until hockey comes back, which could be a while. There'll still be bonus episodes and other things in there. But until hockey returns, after we've done all the other off-season stuff, after that all has been handed out, because we don't know when hockey's coming back. And I don't want to just keep doing 2 episodes a week until we find out what's going on. So we're going to go to 1 episode a week until the start of next regular season. But there will, like I said, there will be bonus episodes. So one of the things, I look at the stats on my episodes all the time, and what are like most popular and everything. So on this Canucks podcast, let's see if you can guess here. Do you know, in your head, do you know what the most popular episode ever of the CreaseCast is, of this Canucks podcast? That's right. It's the Atlanta Thrashers episode I did, where my friend Ryan and I just went and did an entire like in-depth look at the Atlanta Thrashers. It's far and away my most popular episode, the NHL franchise study. So I'm going to be doing more of those. Those are coming back. I think we're going to make it so that you can pick the teams who we go in depth on. I believe that's how I'm going to handle this. But we're definitely going to do at least 2 more of those. Those will not be the 1 episode a week thing. Those will be their own thing, and there'll be a bonus show, but that everyone can listen to. And yes, I'm very excited about getting to do those again and doing like the in-depth podcast on defunct hockey teams, because those are so fun. So we're going to do that again. We're going to do those again for sure. And I believe once I officially set a date for the first one, I'm going to put the Thrashers episode up on YouTube, either in audio or video form. Haven't figured that out yet, but it will go up on the YouTube platform. I'm going to be doing episode highlights during the break and vacation, where I'm just going to put some clips of best ofs sort of thing on the YouTube channel for you to check out. And yeah, there's going to be other stuff too. I haven't figured out everything. I have a little wall over here where I have like ideas. Like I have ideas on sticky notes here of different Patreon ideas and different just episodes in general that we're going to be doing. I'm still going to be writing on my own website, lachinthecrease.com. You should go check that out. There's going to be a new article tomorrow for you to check out as well. So keep an eye out on that. If you enjoy, and as for this episode, thank you for listening. You should check out the Patreon if you enjoyed the show. For $3 a month, you get bonus episodes. You get early looks at articles that I'm working on, like this next one. You're gonna get you'll be able to get an early look at that as well. And as well as a couple other things. And that's the thing. This off season, I'm going to be working on getting a lot more of like stuff for the Patreon and for just ways to make the show even more fun. Next year, it's going to be way bigger. I promise you, next year, CreaseCast is going to be way bigger and better. Like, so much better. I've already got a lot of things in the works for that, and I'm very excited about them. So keep on the lookout for that. Also, check out the CreaseCast YouTube channel. If you haven't already, click subscribe and like. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for listening. Oh, follow the CreaseCast on Twitter, at the CreaseCast as well, trying to get that follower boost up a little bit. And yeah, thank you so much. I hope you for a great Canucks hockey season. This first year doing the CreaseCast, I mean, it started as LITC radio back in June, so technically it's been over a year, because this season and this year has just been so weird. But it's been really fun. I did like 20 episodes where I was just like, this is where I just put it up on the Patreon, and I was like, I really wanted to make it public, and I thought it'd be more fun that way. So, and since it has, I think the show's gotten way better and way bigger and way more fun. And next season, it's going to get even more fun and awesome. I seriously have some really cool ideas. I'm really excited for them for next year. And yeah, it's been great. It's been really fun for me to do this show every week. And again, not going away, still at least 4 or 5 more weeks of 2 episodes a week. So at least 10 more episodes before the season officially calls it quits. So you have that to look forward to as well. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. This has been so much fun, so weird, but so fun. Happy Labor Day. As always, keep social distancing, keep washing your hands with regularity, keep ordering from local restaurants and local places and shopping local as much as you can. It's been fun. Enjoy the rest of this. Enjoy this next Canucks off season. And hey, we might be back doing this we might be by this time next year. Who knows? Maybe we'll be celebrating a Stanley Cup champion. You never know. A Stanley Cup champion Vancouver Canucks team. Who knows? Thank you for listening. This has been the CreaseCast. I'm Lach in the Crease. See you real soon. Bye, everybody.